Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a unique edition of What's Happening. We've got a 5-1, and we're all on Zoom because of the pandemic. But we wanted to keep you informed on what's going on, and we wanted to keep the show going. So we're going to have a Zoom show, and we've got with us today George Binns, Gail Burke, and our token liberal, Stuart Gardner. And we've got an agenda today. The first thing we want to talk about is the pandemic. And what we want to find out from everybody here is what they think of the way the pandemic has been handled by our government. And I think we'll start off with George, and we'll go around the room and we'll see what everybody thinks about how our government, both state and federal, are dealing with the pandemic. So, George.
Well, basically, I think they're doing a very poor job of it. There's too much conflict between the various parties. I'm disappointed that the CDC, with the good Dr. Fauci, never comes out with a definite statement. It's always this could happen, that could happen. It sounds like a lot of PYA and not much real information. And at the same time, I think the statistics are handled rather poorly, that we're getting pushed into a panic situation where everybody's got to lock down based on a computer model that came out of England. And one of the articles that showed up recently is the gentleman that puts these computer models together by the name of Neil Ferguson. He's not the Neil Ferguson that's the history prof from Harvard. It's another one. But he has had a horrible record with predicting pandemics and conflicts. His epidemiology is the fancy name for doing this stuff, has not done well. And I think we've been scared into a panic unnecessarily, and I think the outcome is going to be an awful lot of economic damage to lots of people who can't afford to take the hit.
Okay, Gail.
Well, I agree with what George had to say. I think that the president has done a good job of trying to keep people's spirits up. But I think that Governor Baker has done a terrible job. I think he's made people more afraid than they had to be. I think he's keeping businesses closed when they could be opened. I'm not sure what he deems essential and non-essential, but I think he has not done a very good job. And I'm very upset with him. I know the community that I live in, we have been in pretty much of a lockdown. If you choose to go along with everything that the administration here tells you, you wouldn't. Some people have never even left their apartments for weeks and weeks. I'm not one of those. I chose to leave, to go shopping, and to do whatever. So I think it's done a terrible job. I think it's made people fearful, especially the elderly, fearful of going outside, fearful of meeting up with people. And I think it's going to take a while before they get over that fear.
Okay, Stuart.
Okay. There's a lot about what Gail and George said that I agree with, but I can be a little more specific about where I put blame. So I think we definitely overreacted a little bit. I think if you look at the numbers in Massachusetts, the chance of a person under 60, which might exclude everyone in this group except for me, by the way, of a chance of getting under 60 is something like, something.
I had to say that, Stuart.
Something in the 0.01 or 0.001% chance. And I think what George and Gail alluded to is, and I won't, I hate to give Donald Trump credit, but he did use the term, the cure is worse than the disease. which I think has happened. That being said, I think the mistakes were made at the top. I think, if anything, a plague or a pandemic like this cried out for central leadership. One person at the top going, this is what we need to do. We have states bidding against each other for equipment. We have some people wearing masks, some people not wearing masks. You know, I like what Gail said, I see these elderly people, they look terrified because they don't know who to believe. I see them driving their cars with masks on. Why are you in your car driving with a mask on? It makes no sense. I see, you know, Trump, first they put people 6 feet apart at the press briefing. Then they put them together. Then they made them go to West Point and they were 6 feet apart. Some people on Trump wear the mask, some people don't. There's no centralized message, and that's because Trump can't look weak because he politicized this. And that, other than there's been a S show that everyone else has been talking about, which isn't really Trump's fault, he's made it worse.
Okay, now it's my turn. I've got a number of things. First of all, we all have to understand that this is the first time we've had to deal with something like this. And so it's uncharted territory. There are mistakes that are going to be made. That being said, I don't understand the idea of closing businesses, but some businesses can be open. For instance, in Massachusetts, like Gail said, Baker's done a lousy job. If you're selling marijuana, you can be open. If you're selling alcohol, you can be open. But stores, other stores, you can't be open. So, you know, Target can be open. Some of the big stores can be open. The ones that have the crowds can be open. The small stores where a few people go in once, you know, one or two at a time, they can't be open. Absolutely ridiculous. So, you know, how do you define essential? And I think the way Baker defines essential is we get a lot of tax money out of alcohol and we get a lot of tax money out of marijuana, and that's how he defines essential. When the unemployment, I mean, this goes to show you how stupid our representatives are in Congress. And it doesn't matter which party, by the way. You don't give people more money for not working than for working. It doesn't work that way because now you've taken the incentive away to work. And that's what they've done. They're giving people too much money. I want to give people an incentive to work. We've taken it away. So I don't think that that makes an awful lot of sense. Talking about the state again, and some of the other states who have let prisoners out of prison because of COVID-19. Now here you've got the state saying to us, gee, this is what you do to keep safe, but we don't have to do it. In other words, they're saying get the prisoners out of prison because we can't follow our own rules to keep it safe in the prisons. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So that gets me kind of cranky. I agree it's the first time we've had a situation like this. That being said, they're not too smart up in Congress or in the State House, my opinion.
Can I make one comment?
Just one.
Well, I have to say that I don't think the president politicized this. I think it was made political by many people in government. And unfortunately, at the beginning of this, we really didn't know how to handle it. There was no stockpile of inhalators and all the equipment that was needed after the last epidemic. It was never replaced by the previous administration. One thing that the president did do was great. He got businesses to get together, private businesses, and start making the equipment that was needed and got it out to the people that needed it. And I think he deserves credit for that.
So, Gail, let me say one thing. Look, and to all you guys, I thought about this, and like, this is, a case of first impression. Do we give sort of the government a pass on this? And think about it this way, guys. if I asked you to sit in a room and I said, look, I'm going to pay you your salary, and I just want you to sit in your room and think about all the things that could go wrong with Russia, with China, with pandemics, and just, write down stuff, right? Okay. Now, what if I said if I give you 100 people that are going to work for you that do that? That's what our government does. They pay these ridiculous data centers thousands and thousands and thousands and millions of dollars to plan for everything. Somebody had to plan for this. Now, I get it. Maybe Obama screwed up, maybe the guy before. But somebody put this, the pandemic exercise on the back burner, which it could have been done. There could have been a procedure in place. That's what our tax dollars are for, so that this stuff doesn't take us by surprise. What am I giving 30 cents on every dollar to the government for? If Donald Trump says you can't have your money, I'm going to let you bid against each other. I'm not going to. This is crap.
I happen to agree with you on that, but one thing that we have to understand.
You have to pause the tape, Elliot.
One thing will destroy the tape. One of the things that people forget to realize. The United States is a republic. It is not a democracy. Because it's a republic, every state is responsible for their own well-being, which means New York, Massachusetts, California, everybody's supposed to take care of their own pandemic responsibilities, their own ventilators, their own everything that they need. Then, once they've exhausted that, that's when the federal government is supposed to come in. And the federal government comes in only when asked by the states individually. And people forget that. Naturally, of course, the press forgets that. But that's the way this government works. So, okay, let's move on to item number 2 that we want to talk about today. And that is the George Floyd situation in Minnesota. And let me start off with this one. Absolutely inexcusable what the police officers did. One police officer with his knee on George Floyd's neck, the other 3 police officers just standing and watching, unacceptable. But you know what else was unacceptable? When you see what's going on and you've got a whole bunch of witnesses there, I'm surprised that one of the witnesses, one of the laymen, just didn't push the cop off. Because you would think that, it's wrong, and once somebody takes the initiative, I think other people would have done it. The guy deserves, first or second degree murder. There's no question in my mind about it. And, the riots, unacceptable. Absolutely. We've had people die because of the riots. We've had businesses who were totally innocent get destroyed because of the riots. If you want to solve a problem, destroying other people's properties is not the answer. George, your turn.
Well, it comes down to Einstein's definition of insanity. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome, that's insanity. I looked it up, and I remember that song, Burn Baby Burn, came out of the 1965 riots in Watts. And there have been a number of other riots or protests that turned into riots, and the net result was nothing new happened. And there was a very good article written that described the situation. And it's not just 1 or 2 of these riots. There have been riots since 1920s in all the cities around over the same issue. And the commissions that they create to go investigate them come up with the same conclusion. And at the same time, nothing happens. So I think part of the problem is people keep re-electing the same professional politicians who, when something needs to happen, they don't make it happen. And we still end up with the same kind of a problem. And I agree with you that having a protest is First Amendment rights. Great thing to do. Take your grievances to the government. But burning down your own neighborhood or attacking people And there's been a couple of videos going around, one by Tucker Carlson and another one that I got today of a collection of videos of people being attacked on the street for no apparent reason. And that's supposed to convince somebody that, oh, we got to do something about the problem. It detracts from it. It's a losing proposition.
Okay, Gail.
Okay. It was a vile thing that happened to that fellow. The police should certainly be punished for it. However, the reaction has been unbelievable. This was the catalyst for these groups, particularly Black Lives Matter, to begin rioting. If we go back to the Obama administration, we can look at Ferguson, Missouri. Remember the Michael Brown, the hands up, don't shoot? That never happened. He was shot by a white policeman as well. However, he was the perpetrator. He tried to assault the police officer in his car, and he was shot. And there was horrendous riots. And then people like Jesse Jackson and the Reverend Al add fuel to the fire, just as they did here. There was another killing by a rioter that was, I read about it for 1 or 2 days, and then it was just swept away. His name, he was a Captain David Dorn. He was a retired police captain in St. Louis. And he was shot by a rioter. And it happened to be a black man. Not only was he shot and killed, he was left on the sidewalk to die while somebody actually videotaped his death. He was there to protect his friend's business from being destroyed by the rioters. And that got very little publicity, and it just kind of went away. And that was a result of what happens when you have all this hatred and anger and people lashing out, and you have groups like Black Lives Matter perpetrating this all over the country. As a matter of fact, they have groups in Europe of Black Lives Matter that are doing the same thing. And I don't know what all the answers are, but I certainly don't think that we have to go and murder and plunder and, shoot up businesses and destroy things. That is not the way to come to the table, so to speak. And I think the rioters are dumping on the presidency, dumping on white people. That is coming out, and hatred for white people is escalating. And this has to stop. It cannot continue.
Stuart.
Okay, lots to say. So I obviously never condone violence, and I agree that any of the people that the cops and the riot and the protesters that get caught in the middle of this. Black Lives Matter has disavowed all of the rioting. They said it's not us. We don't want anything to do with it. The people that rioting may believe in the Black Lives Matter cause, but the Black Lives Matter cause does not believe in those people. That's pretty clear. What the George Floyd issue did for me, and it was made clear to me that we need systemic change. And I'm not, I don't know what that means, and I want to be clear, but the black man went from slavery to Jim Crow to the war on drugs, and basically every move that the black man makes is watched by authorities, and if he protests, if he moves, if he goes the wrong way, he gets shot. Now, I agree that there's personal responsibility in the issue, and I don't run from cops, and I submit to their questioning, and I try not to commit infractions, but I don't have a history of my cousin telling me he was chased after by cops, or my brother-in-law who was shot by cops, or I don't have that. And so what I'm hearing the black voices say is it's in the system, and it's not black versus white. It's a cop. It's a system. It's not cops. It's the system, because there are plenty of black cops out there doing the same thing that other cops do. Is that they go into a neighborhood, they fear for their lives or something like that, and someone gets shot. There has to be systemic change. And I applauded President Trump for some of the stuff he did today. I just don't think it went far enough.
Okay, it's a difficult situation for sure, but police have to have some authority. If you're being arrested, well, like in the case of Floyd, of George Floyd, from what I understand from the police, once you put somebody in handcuffs, it's over. Okay, you get them in the car, it's over. There's nothing that person can do. George Floyd was in handcuffs. It should have been over.
Yeah.
And that's the end of that story. But as we move on now to Atlanta and the situation in Atlanta, we have a guy who, number one, fell asleep in the drive-through lane, okay, because he was drunk. He was also on parole for a violent crime. Okay, so he's on parole. He was drinking and driving, and when the cops got to him, they had a conversation for a while, and then when they wanted to put him in cuffs because he was violating parole, he got kind of cranky. They had an argument. They had a fight. He stole one of the guns from the cop.
Taser.
A taser. Doesn't matter what it is. If you're going to shoot it at somebody, it's a gun.
It's a weapon.
And he goes and he points the taser at the cop after fighting with the cop. He points the taser. Well, what's your natural instinct? To defend yourself, which is what the cop did. Totally different scenario. But my question would be, what did Wendy's have to do with it? Why did they burn down the building? George.
Well, there's so much wrong with this situation. You can start anywhere and get off on a tangent. And I think one of the big problems that people don't recognize is we're getting lousy information from the media. And that's about all that's driving this. And you talk about the situation in Ferguson under the Obama administration. What very few people realize is that the city fathers of Ferguson were using the black community as a piggy bank.
Yeah.
And they would systematically arrest people, put them in a bad situation. You can only go to court for 2 o'clock on Thursday afternoons. If you don't get heard, then you're in violation, and just jack up the fines. So there was a bad situation going on to start with, which gets people in a cranky mood, is to use Eliot's words. You look at the situation with George Floyd. He was supposedly either trying to pass a bad check or a
counterfeit $20 bill.
A phony $20 bill. But as Elliot mentioned, they had him in cuffs. And I saw the video where they had him sitting on the ground. Then they picked him up. Why wasn't he in a patrol car by then? Supposedly he was on fentanyl. That's a story that's floated around. Supposedly he said he was claustrophobic. I really don't know what happened. So if you don't know what happens, how do you come up with a solution to fix it? And I think one of the problems we've got to get over is the media has to start telling the whole story, not just things that it leads, or the new format is, if it's outrageous, it leads.
Can I jump in? I want to say something.
Let me finish one thought here. I'm getting to is that this gets people in a cranky mood. And the other version of it is they get to be thinking that we're all victims. And once you become a victim, then your mindset changes that, well, anything I do is all right because I'm a victim and I can lash back any way I want, which leads to the riots. You're on, Elliot. Or
Stuart.
Yeah, and you know what? A lot of what you said, George, I agree with. And in fact, your Ferguson comment was right on point about systemic change in what to do. And I want to make a suggestion here to the viewers. Decriminalize individual possession of drugs. Now, I'm not promoting drug use, but if I used to watch Live PD, they've taken them off, Live PD and Cops, and you watch these shows, and all these people, and a lot of them are black, are poor, are pulled over because of a broken taillight, and they have a roach clip or a crack pipe or something for their own personal use in the car. And they get arrested. And I get it. There's personal responsibility there. But what George just said, they getting arrested means now they miss 2-3 days of work. Maybe they violated parole. Maybe their partner will kick them out. Maybe there's a fine that they can't pay of $1,000. All this stuff for smoking a joint or smoking the crack pipe. Now, I get it. They shouldn't be out in public doing it. Or drugs have detrimental effects on society. But what we've done is we've created a permanent, non-voting, disenfranchised class of people, and that's why they burn stuff down. I don't encourage it. I don't agree with it, but that's why they got nothing. What do they care? The Wendy's isn't theirs. They don't own anything. They're like, I don't give a crap about this stuff. And I agree. You're 100% right. But that's what's happening. And if we want to fix this, we got to do something about it.
All right, Gail.
Okay. Well, first of all, the police officer in Atlanta, he was fired after Rayshard Brooks was killed.
They just arrested him,
Pardon me?
I think they just arrested him today.
Well,
Yeah,
I watched the video, and the video showed that, as far as I could see, they had a very nice conversation prior to him getting angry. They did try to put his hands behind his back because he was getting a little edgy, and he must have been an extremely strong man to fight off two police officers, grab the taser and run. And he turned around and was shooting the taser at the cops. And from what I could see of the video, one of the cops did get hit by the taser. He wasn't hurt, severely hurt, but it did hit him, and then they shot him. Maybe they shouldn't have shot him. I don't know. But the point is, the police officer has been arrested. It could lead to the death penalty. He's been charged 11 charges. Now, okay, maybe that's a little bit extreme. I don't know, because he has to be tried and convicted. But in the public's mind, he's already been convicted, and he should go to prison. That's the picture that's being portrayed. I think what we have to understand is that this has been going on for a long time. I think that, but there are bad cops. But most of them are good cops. But if they're bad cops, particularly like the ones in, where was it? Well, for the George Floyd killing. Minneapolis. I think that the police captains and the mayor of Minneapolis have to be called to account. The police answer to the mayor. The mayor answers to the governor and the people. And if this cop had a bad record, he had a very violent record, and yet they kept him on. Why? Why didn't they get rid of him?
Unions.
Why don't they clean house?
Real simple. Unions.
What?
Police unions.
The interesting thing about this one is
Something has to change.
the mayor of Minneapolis claimed he knew this was a bad cop, and there were other bad cops on this force, and he was saying the union contract prevents him from getting rid of them. He's the guy that negotiates the union contract with them.
Yep.
And also, it was the New Deal big moved to strengthen the unions. So it goes way back. And one of the obvious questions is, if somebody's got civil service protection, why do they need a union?
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah, I think that's a mess. So Gail, just to your point and to chime in, yeah, it's the bad cop, but it's the system that had the other three cops not say anything.
That's
In other
true.
words, and that I don't feel bad, but obviously whoever the guy that killed George Floyd, he had hate in his heart. That man wanted to kill George Floyd. I don't know if the other cops wanted to kill him. They were just following that cop's lead because that's what they do.
There was bad blood between them, Stu.
And that's possible. But what the reason why I say the system's broken is because they blindly follow these guys, and it's too hard to get the bad cops out. It's like getting bad teachers out. You guys used to scream about that. There should be a way to cut off bad limbs from a system so that they don't bring the whole system down. If one other cop had jumped in and stopped the George Floyd thing, this whole mess wouldn't have happened. But it's happening too much.
Oh, yeah. Let me get back to the point I was making earlier, that once you start victimizing all of the police, you get this thin blue line concept. Nobody says anything because, hey, everybody's against us, because we're the victims in these cases. And too many of the good cops have to stand up for the ones that are in trouble, because you don't know when something is going to turn on you and you're going to need them. We're creating a society that is a police that is not conducive to change.
I have to interrupt, George, because we are about 15 seconds away from ending this recording. I'm going to have to upgrade my Zoom. So that'll be it for this show. Thank you for watching. And I think we're going to do a few of these. This is, it's almost as good as being there.
Nothing's as good as being with you, Elliot.
I appreciate that, Stuart. Thank you.
He wants to
Play
give
golf
you
with your father tomorrow. We'll see you later. Thanks for watching.
Okay, thank you.